The stairwell door slammed shut behind me hard enough to echo. I barely noticed. I was already halfway down the first flight, one hand on the rail, phone still in my fist, heart beating with the ugly, disorganized rhythm that kicks in when your life splits in two at the worst possible time. My sister's text was still open on the screen. Dad collapsed at physical therapy. They're taking him to St. Luke's. I'm going with him now. Under it, one more line. Don't panic until we know more. Which, of course, is exactly the kind of sentence that guarantees panic. I should explain the timing because that was the cruel part. It was 10 minutes before the biggest client presentation of the quarter. My name is Evan Cole, and at 36, I had built a life around staying calm under pressure. I was a senior strategy lead at a corporate restructuring firm in Boston, the kind of place where people wore expensive restraint and called stress velocity. I was good at my job because I could take a room full of bad numbers, angry executives, and impossible deadlines and make them behave. Most days that felt useful. Today it felt ridiculous. Because none of that helped when your father might be dying while you were standing on the 19th floor in a Navy suit about to explain hospital expansion projections to a boardroom full of people who thought urgency was a branding concept. So I did what I hadn't done in years. I ran. Not out of the building, not yet. Just out of the conference floor, into the stairwell. Away from the glass walls, the assistants, the polished table, the giant screen with my deck already loaded, and the possibility that somebody would look at my face and know instantly that I was no longer in control of it. I made it down one landing before the next door burst open above me. Evan, I kept going. Heard you the first time, I muttered. Heels hit concrete fast and sharp behind me. Then she was there. Natalie Brooks reached the next landing before I could take the turn, planted herself squarely in front of the stairs, and folded her arms like she had personally been appointed by the building to stop bad decisions. She was my biggest rival at work. And unfortunately, one of the only people in the firm who knew exactly how to read me. Natalie was 34, brilliant, infuriating, and so offensively competent it would have been easier to hate her if I hadn't respected her as much as I did. We had spent the last 2 years circling the same promotion, challenging each other in meetings, dismantling each other's weak points before anyone else could, and pretending that the electricity between us was just professional friction. Everybody else in the office thought we disliked each other. That was convenient. The truth was worse. We understood each other too well. You're not leaving until you tell me what happened, she said. Exactly like that. No soft landing, no, are you okay? No polite version. Just the door blocked by my rival in a charcoal pencil skirt and white blouse. Dark hair pinned up. ID badge still clipped to her waist, eyes fixed on me with the kind of focus she usually reserved for flawed financial assumptions. This is not your business, I said. No. She tilted her head slightly. But you don't sprint for a stairwell 5 minutes before a client pitch unless something is very wrong, and I'd prefer to know whether I'm about to present a loan or call an ambulance. Under normal circumstances, I might have laughed. That was the problem with Natalie. She could make concern sound like a challenge and a challenge sound like concern. I gripped the phone tighter. My dad collapsed. Her whole face changed. Not dramatically. That would have been easier. It softened in one precise, immediate shift, and all the rivalry drained out of it at once. Collapsed how? I don't know. I hated how rough my own voice sounded. My sister texted. They were at his physical therapy appointment. They're taking him to St. Luke's. Natalie's eyes flicked to my phone, then back to me. Did she say he was conscious? No. Did she say stroke? Heart? Anything? No. She nodded once, thinking, always thinking. Then she asked, Can you drive right now? That irritated me immediately, which was probably why she asked it. Yes. That's not an answer, that's pride. I took one step down. She didn't move. Natalie. No, not until you stop pretending that if you keep your voice level, you're functioning. Her eyes stayed on mine. You're shaking. I looked down. My hand was, in fact, shaking. I hated that she'd noticed. I hated more that she was the one who had. This is exactly why I was leaving, I said. What, because you'd rather fall apart in traffic than let anyone see it in a stairwell? That's not fair. No, she said quietly. It's accurate. The silence after that felt too full. I wanted to get past her. I wanted to call my sister. I wanted my father not to be on his way to a hospital, while a woman I spent half my working life trying not to think about too much stood 6 feet away and looked at me like she could see straight through every defensive habit I owned. Natalie reached into the pocket of her blazer and pulled out her phone. "I'm calling Valerie," she said. I frowned. "Why?" "Because Valerie can take the deck." She was already typing. "I know you're half better than she does, so I'll handle questions if they push on the financial projections. You can't just, I can, and I am. Natalie, that's the Hartwell account. I'm aware. That's your presentation, too." That almost made her smile, but not quite. "Yes, which is why I know we don't miss it unless there's a real reason." Then she looked up from her phone and said something that hit far harder than I was prepared for. "Go be a son, Evan. I can be your rival again tomorrow." That stopped me. Because in all the years I had known her, Natalie had never once stepped aside for me. Not in meetings, not in promotions, not in strategy calls, not in anything. And now, in the exact moment it would cost her the most, she had. My phone buzzed again. A message from my sister. "He's awake. Doctor says come now." The relief was so sharp it almost hurt. I closed my eyes for half a second. When I opened them, Natalie was still standing there, one hand braced on the rail, watching my face with that same fierce, steady attention. "Alive?" she asked. I nodded once. "Awake." Her shoulders eased, only a little, but I saw it. Then she stepped aside. Finally. I moved past her, but when I reached the next landing, her voice stopped me again. "Evan." I turned. Natalie stood there, in the gray stairwell light, phone in one hand, all sharp edges and impossible calm, and said, "If the doctor says it's serious, call me before you call the office. I mean that." And just like that, my biggest rival stopped looking like the woman trying to beat me to the next title and started looking dangerously like the only person who had known exactly how to catch me before I broke. St. Luke's smelled like disinfectant, burnt coffee, and the kind of fear people tried to keep folded behind practical questions. By the time I got there, my sister Anna was in the family waiting area outside cardiac observation, still wearing her coat, hair half falling out of its clip, phone in one hand, and our father's wallet in the other. The second she saw me, she stood. "He's okay?" I asked. "He's awake," she said immediately. "They think it was an arrhythmia, maybe triggered by dehydration and overexertion. They're still running tests." I exhaled so hard it almost made me lightheaded. Not fine, but alive, awake, still here. Anna touched my arm. "He kept asking if you were coming." That one got me. I sat beside her and forced myself to ask useful questions instead of the panicked ones. Which doctor? What tests? What they'd ruled out? Whether Mom knew, she did. Whether he'd spoken clearly, he had. Whether he'd made a joke yet. Anna gave me a tired look. 3. One of them was about the hospital pudding. Good, that's a strong sign. It was nearly noon before they let us see him. He looked smaller in the bed than I was prepared for. Not weak exactly, just suddenly mortal in a way fathers are rude enough not to warn you about. He smiled when he saw us and said, "You both look terrible," which helped more than anything else had. He was stable, embarrassed, angry at his body. The cardiologist said they wanted to keep him overnight and do more imaging in the afternoon. Maybe a procedure the next morning, depending on what the scan showed. All of that was manageable. Then my phone buzzed. "Natalie. Presentation is done." We got the account. Natalie. "Valerie cried in the bathroom for 6 minutes but recovered." Natalie. "I told Hartwell you had a family emergency and that anyone who objected could take it up with me personally." I stared at the screen longer than necessary, Anna noticed. "Work?" "Yeah." "Bad?" I looked down at the message again. "No," I said slowly. "Actually, weirdly not." The rest of the afternoon blurred into consent forms, coffee, and updates from nurses who had mastered the art of sounding calm without sounding fake. Around 4, Anna went downstairs to deal with insurance calls, and I was in the hallway outside my father's room pretending the vending machine crackers were food when someone said, "That is a deeply depressing lunch choice." I turned. Natalie was standing there in the same white blouse and charcoal skirt from the office, blazer over one arm, hair no longer perfectly pinned, carrying a paper bag and two coffees, like she had stepped out of a very expensive version of Concern. For a second, I just stared at her. "What are you doing here?" I asked. She lifted one coffee slightly. "You left without your charger, your notes, or the ability to make responsible nutritional decisions. I brought all three. That should not have affected me as much as it did." "Natalie." "Yes?" "You came to the hospital. That does appear to be where I am." I laughed despite myself, and something in her face eased when I did. She handed me one of the coffees and the paper bag. Real food. A turkey sandwich from the deli downstairs, fruit, a granola bar I absolutely would not have chosen for myself. "You handled the whole presentation?" I asked. "Yes." "And Hartwell?" "Still pompous, still billable." I smiled into the coffee. She leaned one shoulder against the wall beside me. "Your father?" "Stable. They're deciding whether to do a procedure tomorrow." Natalie nodded once. "Good." Not cheerful, not careless, just sincerely relieved. I looked at her. "You didn't have to do any of this." "I know." "Then why did you?" That made her go quiet. Not uncomfortable, just measured. Then she looked down the hall toward my father's room and said, "Because when you ran for the stairwell, you didn't look stressed. You looked scared." I said nothing. She kept her voice low. "And because people in offices are very good at mislabeling fear as inconvenience, I hate that." That line felt personal. Maybe because it was. I leaned back against the wall beside her. "What happened?" Natalie looked at the floor for a second, then at me. "My older brother had an aneurysm 6 years ago," she said, "at work. Everyone thought he'd had a panic attack because he kept saying he was fine and trying to finish a call." Her mouth tightened. By the time someone stopped listening to what he said and started looking at his face, he'd collapsed. The hallway got very quiet. "I'm sorry," I said. She nodded once, accepting it without trying to make it easier. "So, yes, when I saw you in that stairwell, I may have overruled your dignity." That one got me. Not because it was funny, because it was the closest thing to a confession she had given me. I looked at her for a long second. "Natalie, you should have told me." Her brows lifted slightly. "Why?" "So you could become awkwardly nice in meetings?" "That seems unfair." "That seems correct." I almost laughed again, but the feeling in my chest had changed shape too much for it. Anna came back around the corner then, stopped when she saw Natalie, and gave me a look I was absolutely not going to unpack in a hospital corridor. "This is Natalie," I said. "We work together." Natalie stepped forward, shook her hand, and somehow managed to look both polished and entirely out of place in the fluorescent hospital light. Anna smiled. "The stairwell woman." I turned to her. "I'm sorry?" Anna shrugged. "You say her name a lot." Natalie's eyes slid to mine. My entire nervous system filed an objection. Before I could recover, a nurse stepped out of my father's room and said, "Family for Dr. Shu?" Anna and I both turned. Then the nurse added, looking directly at me, "And if Ms. Brooks is staying, the doctor will want to speak to all of you at once." I looked back at Natalie. She hadn't corrected the word staying, and for some reason that hit me harder than anything else. Had all day. Dr. Hai was calm, direct, and the first person all day who made the whole thing sound survivable. My father had a rhythm issue, not a heart attack, not a stroke. Serious enough to warrant a procedure in the morning, but controlled for now. Overnight monitoring, more tests. No dramatic promises, but no disaster either. The relief left me shaky in a whole new way. Natalie stood slightly behind me while the doctor explained everything. One hand tucked into her blazer pocket, asking exactly 2 questions, both sharper than the 3 I'd been trying to form in my own head. Anna noticed. I knew because after Dr. Shu left, she looked between us and said, "Okay, so either corporate America is softer than I thought, or this woman likes you an alarming amount." "Anna," I said. Natalie, to her credit, didn't even flinch. "Those are not mutually exclusive." My sister laughed so hard she had to lean against the wall. A little later, Anna went back into Dad's room to help him bully the nurse about hospital socks, and Natalie and I ended up alone near the vending machines again. You didn't have to stay through the consult, I said. I know. You keep saying that. You keep needing to hear it. Fair. I looked at her. So, hear this. Thank you. Natalie's expression shifted. Just slightly, just enough to show the words landed somewhere real. Then her phone buzzed. She checked the screen and swore under her breath. What? Hartwell. She already sounded irritated. They want a post-presentation debrief tonight because apparently winning the account wasn't enough of a hobby. You can take it tomorrow. They won't wait until tomorrow. She answered before I could argue. I only heard her side at first. Calm, short, professional. Then her face changed. Not much, just enough. And I knew someone on the other end had said something stupid. Natalie's voice went colder. No, Evan did not leave us exposed. He left because his father was taken to the hospital. A beat. No, I'm not interested in whether the timing was inconvenient for finance. Another beat. Then finance can learn to be human and bill around it. I stared at her. She kept going. No, you may not call him. If you need something tonight, you call me. If you need something tomorrow, you still call me. Her eyes flicked to mine for 1 second. And if anyone on this account suggests again that he was irresponsible for leaving, I'll make sure Hartwell understands exactly which part of their leadership team lacks judgment. Then she hung up. The vending machine hummed like it had just witnessed something sacred. I looked at her. That sounded expensive. It was worth it. Natalie. She met my eyes. No, I'm serious. There it was again. The thing under the thing. Not rivalry, not duty. Something warmer and much less safe. You didn't have to do that either, I said quietly. She stepped closer, still holding the dead phone in one hand. I know. Then why? Because, she cut in, I am very tired of people treating the things that matter to you like obstacles. Her voice lowered. And because I hate hearing your name used carelessly. That knocked the air out of me. We were standing too close now. Close enough that the fluorescent hospital light stopped mattering and all I could really see was her face, and the fact that for the first time since I'd met her, Natalie wasn't trying to hide the edge of what she felt. I said the only thing I had. That sounded personal. It was. No smile, no joke. Just that. Then Anna's voice floated out from Dad's room. Evan? He's asking if you found the decent coffee yet. Natalie stepped back first. Only half a step, but enough to save us both. I should go, she said. I nodded, though I didn't want to. She adjusted her blazer, put the office back onto her face piece by piece, and somehow that made the moment feel even more dangerous, not less. At the elevator, she turned to me and said, Text me after the procedure tomorrow. I will. And Evan? Yeah? Her eyes held mine for one long second. Don't make me be the only one saying reckless things in hospitals. Then the elevator doors opened and my biggest rival walked inside, looking once again like the most composed woman in Boston. Except now I knew exactly how hard she was, working to look that way. And worse, I was no longer sure I wanted her to. Dad's procedure went well. That was the first good thing. Not easy, not minor, but good. The doctor came out just after 10:30, said the word successful, and I felt my knees go weak in a way I would have found embarrassing if relief hadn't drowned everything else. The second good thing came 30 seconds later when I texted Natalie. He's okay, procedure worked. She answered almost immediately. Good. Now breathe like a person, not a spreadsheet. I laughed in the middle of the cardiac floor. Anna looked over. Stairwell woman? I nodded once. She smiled into her coffee. Knew it. Natalie didn't come to the hospital that day, which turned out to be exactly right. She gave me room, checked in once that evening, once the next morning, never too much, never performative, just enough to make it impossible to mistake what had happened between us for a stress hallucination. Dad came home 3 days later, grumpy and alive, which was the best possible combination. A week after that, I went back to work. The office looked exactly the same. Glass walls, quiet shoes, expensive urgency. the whole machine running like nothing had changed, but everything had. I made it through emails, a Hartwell debrief, and one aggressively pointless budget call before I saw Natalie near the stairwell, just after 6, shrugging into her blazer, clearly about to leave. So I did the only reasonable thing. I got there first. She stopped when she saw me blocking the door and lifted one brow. Really? Really? That feels familiar. It should. A slow smile touched her mouth. And? I looked at her for one long second, then I said, "You're not leaving until you tell me what happened." She laughed softly. "That's theft. You stole my line." "I'm repurposing it." Natalie crossed her arms and leaned lightly against the wall. "Fine. What exactly am I supposed to explain?" I stepped closer. Not enough to corner her, just enough that this stopped feeling like office theater and became what it was. "What happened?" I said. "When my biggest rival became the first person I wanted updates from, the only one I trusted to hold the office together, and the woman I haven't stopped thinking about since the hospital." Her face changed. Not shock. Recognition. Like she'd been waiting for me to stop translating all of this into manageable language and say it clean. So I did. "I'm done pretending that what happened between us only made sense because it was a bad night," I said. "It made sense because it was you." Natalie's eyes held mine. "Good," she said quietly. "Because it got worse in daylight." I smiled despite myself. "Worse?" "For my self-control." She took one step toward me. "Much worse." That was enough. I kissed her there in the stairwell, not recklessly. Not like we were stealing something, like we were finally done delaying it. When we pulled apart, she kept one hand on my jacket and let out a breath that sounded almost annoyed. "Well," she murmured, "that still seems to be your word. It's efficient." "So am I." That got a real smile out of her. Then she said, "We should probably discuss the fact that we work together before I let this become a personality." Agreed. So we did. Not that second. Later, over dinner, like adults. We set rules. No office drama, no weaponizing rivalry, no letting whatever this was make us stupid in conference rooms. And because the promotion track was still active, we agreed on one more thing. If this was real, it deserved to survive ambition, not be hidden behind it. It turned out that was the easiest part. 3 weeks later, Natalie met my father. He looked at her across my parents' kitchen table, smiled at me over the rim of his coffee, and said, "So, this is the stairwell problem." I nearly choked. Natalie, traitor that she was, laughed and said, "I prefer stairwell solution." Dad liked her instantly. Of course he did. 4 months later, the firm named her head of strategic accounts and moved me into a new operations lead role under a different division head, which solved the reporting mess without either of us having to shrink. We still argued in meetings, still challenged each other, still made junior associates nervous when we started saying, "Walk me through that again," in stereo. The difference was that now, afterward, she'd steal my coffee and kiss me in the elevator when no one was looking. And the strangest part of all of it was this. My life did not become less disciplined. It became less lonely. That was the real plot twist. Not the stairwell, not the hospital, not even the kiss. It was that the woman who had once blocked my escape became the person I stopped wanting to leave. What would you have done if your biggest rival blocked the stairwell and refused to let you walk out with your fear alone? And have you ever had someone see through you at exactly the moment you were trying hardest not to be seen? Tell me your story in the comments. If you like this one, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.